Hey class, I just want to talk to you a little bit about this assignment where you are getting to choose a chapter from a textbook in your field and you're going to read it and process the information in the chapter. In this video, I'm just going to show you kind of how to locate a textbook chapter and then kind of talk about what you're supposed to do, and I'll show you kind of an example of me doing it. So first off, to locate a textbook, a free textbook, the two easiest places that I'm going to direct you to, and you are the Open Textbook Library, which I have open here, and there's a link in the assignment. And then the second one is OpenStax. They're both free access to textbooks at those websites. Okay. And they're organized by subject, right? So if I come to subject, I can see here's all the science textbooks, the social sciences, the humanities, business, etc. Same thing here, right? At the Open Textbook Library, if I browse subjects, I'll see all of the subjects here. Okay. And so what you want to do is go to your field, your discipline, right? And check out the textbooks for that discipline. So let's just say, and what you're going to do, right? Once you find one, is you're going to read it and take notes. It's going to be if you can print it out and annotate, that's great. I think you're going to learn more that way. You're going to get more practice at annotating. If you can annotate on the screen using a screen annotator, that's also useful. If you can't, then I would just suggest you have a notebook out while you're reading and you take notes, and as you're going along. Okay, so you're gonna, I'd like you to try to do the sorts of things while you read that we've talked about when you annotate, right? Like identifying main ideas, identifying key terms, looking up words you don't know, responding to the text, those kinds of things, right? Looking for topic sentences, all of that can help you to digest what you're reading. The other thing you could do is turn, especially in textbooks, a super useful strategy is turning headings into questions, which I had to do last week. And that is a really great way to create a study guide to get you through a chapter. Okay. So those are things you can do as you're reading, right? And then afterwards, you're going to process your notes, right? So you're going to process what you learned. And we're going to use the strategies that we've used this semester. You can create a visual organizer or a set of Cornell notes. And if the third option is you can do like a PowerPoint presentation if you'd like. And with that option, you could choose to do voiceover or not, totally up to you. The point is, whichever one you choose, I just want you to get in the habit of processing after you've read, right? Putting it into your own words, putting it into your own structure, because that's how the deep learning happens. And that's how you're going to be successful throughout your college career. So that's, excuse me. So that's what the assignment's asking you to do. I want to take a look at just an example chapter, right? Like, so let's say that I'm a criminal justice major, right? So I go to law here, right? And I see that there's a bunch of different textbooks, right? And I can scroll through these and choose one that I find interesting. One thing I will say is it's probably in your best interest to pick one that has some reviews, just because that means a number of people have used it and found it useful. Okay. So if I scroll down through these, a lot of these don't have reviews yet. This one has 4, right? Business law essentials. So that's going to be like a general overview of business law. So that could be useful. Introduction to the American criminal justice system, 11 reviews. This sounds good too, because it's like an overview, intro to the American criminal justice system. Sounds kind of like an introductory textbook. Okay, so maybe I decide I want to check that one out, right? And here I've got my table of contents, right? And I've got my formats. I can see it online. I can see it in PDF form. I can see it as an ebook. And what you're going to do is choose a chapter, right? So, you can look through, you could peruse some of the chapters, see which ones sound interesting to you, and pick one that, speaks to your interests. So if I click on the online textbook here, I'm going to go, let's just say that I'm interested in policing, right? So I can go to chapter 6, right? And I'm going to read and take notes on chapter 6, right? And it is a textbook. Textbooks are always going to start with learning objectives, which are kind of like directing you to know, like, at the end of this is what you should be able to do, right? So at the end, can you discuss how the history of policing relates to current policing? Can you list the different parts of the history of policing, right? Can you recognize the errors, et cetera, et cetera? These kinds of boxes are really helpful because you can use them to direct your reading, and then you can use them to direct your processing of like important points at the end when you're creating your Cornell notes or when you're creating a PowerPoint or a visual organizer, right? It should clearly address all of these things, right? Same thing here with these critical thinking questions, right? You should be able to answer all of these questions. This is kind of like that idea of creating a set of questions if they don't give you one from the headings, right? In this case, a textbook chapter is always going to give you questions, right? And so, if you look at those questions and you can't answer them, you need to go back and do a little bit more work. So and I wanted to show you also here, right? So I could see the whole thing laid out, right? Here are the different sections that I'm going to have in chapter 6, right? Policing in ancient times. That sounds like it's going to relate to the history, right? Sir Robert Peel. I don't know who Sir Robert Peel is. I'm going to guess that he, was some sort of innovator in policing. Policing errors is going to probably talk about, it looks like it'll relate directly to number 3, right? What are the 4 errors of policing? So I'm going to have to learn what those are. And then I see about levels of policing, recruitment, a couple of chapters, right? And police misconduct. So 6.7 looks like it has to do with like the management of police forces, right? And then much of the rest is devoted to current issues, right? Now, again, I have not read the chapter, right? But if I'm thinking about like a set of Cornell notes or like a visual organizer, I might group this into a couple areas, right? These first few feel like they have to do with like the history, right? These middle 3 or 4 sound like they have to do with like sort of the management or the carrying out of policing and how that works, right? And then much of the rest is devoted to current issues and talking about those issues in detail, right? So say I'm doing a visual organizer, right? I might have 3 areas. And then for each of those areas, I might go into detail about each of these sections, right? So that's just a very general overview of kind of like how I would approach the assignment, right? Or I can, and I can do the same thing. If I choose to do a PowerPoint, I just might structure it in the same way of like, I've got these 3 areas, and then I would give the supporting details, which would go into each section that's within that area. Okay. And, same thing if I'm doing Cornell notes, I might have, in some sense, I might be able to even use these questions or versions of these questions in my left-hand column. And then in my right-hand column, I have my answers to those questions. And then at the bottom, I have my summary of the entire chapter, okay? And you'll also notice, I don't see it here. Let's see if I go to the end. A lot of times a textbook chapter will end with a summary. It doesn't look like this one does. And I'm not saying that you should then just like copy that summary into yours, but you can always check your summary against the summaries within the chapter to make sure you're understanding it. But to make the learning happen and to like prepare you, say you were doing an exam on this chapter, the processing is what gets that stuff to sink in deep, right? Because in college, it's not going to always be like open book, open note exam like mine. So you want to be able to digest this information and really know it so that when you go into a test, you're ready to do it, okay? So that is how I would approach the assignment. And let me just kind of come back here. I want to just show you a little bit else about browsing the subjects, right? So, if you're business, right, here's where you'll find some business textbooks, and you can pick an area that you're interested in and scan the textbooks there, pick a chapter from one that you find interesting. A few of you are computer science majors. You're going to find some textbooks here about information systems and programming languages. Those are the kinds of textbooks you're going to see in your computer science classes. So I suggest you take one of those, find a chapter that sounds interesting to you, and do the assignment on that chapter. Some of you are early childhood ed. And so if you come under education, you'll see early childhood and elementary education. That's where you would find books. That's where you'd most likely find books that are going to be of interest to you. For those of you who are like liberal studies, you have a much more a variety of things to choose from. You could pretty much do anything under humanities. And so if there's a specific area that's of interest to you, you can go there, or feel free to look through all these and just find something that speaks to you. A few of you might be like architecture or art design and stuff like that. And you might be able to use, like, if you come under arts here, you might be able to find something in there that's of interest to you. And then, a whole bunch of you are healthcare studies, right? And so, what I think makes the most sense for you is to go to natural sciences and jump into the bio, because those are the classes that you're going to first kind of encounter as like the major sort of physical science, natural science classes. So if you go to bio, and actually, I want to show you. I think the bio textbook in OpenStax works a little bit better. So if you go to the OpenStax page, go to subjects, go to science, there's biology 2.0. And we actually, when we did viruses, it was from this biology um, textbook. So you can come here, you can click view online, you get the table of contents, right? So chapter 1 is, right, whoops, let's just see. So let's say I'm interested in animal structure and function, right? So I come here and I have about 10 or 11 chapters just in that section, right? I only have to choose one chapter, right? So, it may be the animal body, basic form, and function. It might be the nervous system, whatever it is. I can choose a single chapter. Maybe I'm going to skip animal structure, right? I'm kind of an outdoorsy person. I like ecology, right? So maybe I want to look at ecosystems and the ecology of ecosystems, right? So I'll come to chapter 46, right? And tells me similarly, I have learning objectives, right? Here's what I should be able to do by the end of the chapter. And I'm going to read through the chapter and I'm going to do the assignment in the same sort of way, right? This one doesn't start with a set of study questions, right? But it does have chapter subheadings, right? Food chains and food webs, right? So I might turn that into a question. What are food chains and what are food webs? And then, I would want to be able to answer that. And you'll notice in textbooks a lot of times, you probably know this from high school, but it's worth reiterating. Key terms are going to be in bold, and so you should be able to define those and understand, for example, what a tertiary consumer is, right? Carnivores that eat other carnivores, right? It's a very tertiary consumer. I have to remember that one. That's a new one for me. But anyway, this might be, so if you're healthcare studies, bio might be the textbook for you to go to. Okay. So that is an overview of the assignment. Okay. And if you have questions, certainly let me know. Like, if you're not sure if you've picked a good chapter or something, just like shoot me an email and just send me a link and be like, hey, this is my major and I was thinking of doing this chapter in this textbook. Does that make sense? And I can tell you if I think it makes sense or not. Okay. And I tried to, I think just, I went through all of your majors and it does look like there's a textbook for everyone here, kind of. I think some of the harder ones, like if you're like photographic imaging or like architecture or something, if you're having trouble finding something, just let me know and I'll help you find it. Okay. So good luck. I hope this assignment motivates you, since it's a chance for you to engage kind of directly with your interests and kind of direct your learning a little bit more here at the end of the semester as we get ready to move on. Okay, thanks everyone. Bye.